Hi, my name is Frederick Carlson. I've been working professionally with computers and in the software industry since 1997. I've been doing some basic programming since 1987 though. I have worked in projects having no method at all, waterfall, iterative, and of course agile methods. So I have tried some different product methods and frameworks, and I have a fair understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of the different approaches you can take, and I will try to share this with you today. But today I'm here to talk you through the basics of Scrum. And my goal for you is to understand the principles of Scrum and Agile methods. Or it's not a method really, it's a framework. But I want you to know a little bit about where they come from, the philosophy behind it, and to give you an understanding of Scrum and how to use Scrum in order for you to start experimenting with it yourself. So we begin with talking about what and where Agile methods comes from, or the Agile framework, and then we'll talk a little bit more about when can you use it and why should you use it, and finally we'll go into the how. So from the beginning, there were a couple of very famous people who met in a famous ski resort, but they didn't go skiing. They met instead, and I guess they had a bottle of wine or two and discussed how they could improve how software projects were going. At that time, most of the projects related to software were failing, both because they were either cost overrun or they were not finished on time, or by the time the project was actually finished, there was no business for that project anymore. I mean, it could take a year or two for the project to get out to the market. So they sat down and they came up with this great Agile manifesto. And what this manifesto says is that the things you see on the screen on the left we prefer over the things on the right. That is not to say that the things on the right is not important, it's just that we prefer the things on the left. The first statement is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And what we mean by this is that it's more important how individuals interact with each other, how a team together can solve problems to reach the end goal, rather than which processes and tools you use. Processes can be good if you have no idea of anything and you need to describe something very basic, but processes can also be quite cumbersome and they can get in the way. The same thing with tools. I mean, tools are something you use, but even if you buy the best tennis racket in the world, it doesn't make you a pro. You need to have people who can use the tools. So therefore individuals are more important than the actual tools. The second thing is working software over comprehensive documentation. I'm sure that some of you have encountered a situation where you have received a 300-page thick requirement specification, or when you have been given a very thick book describing the design of your system. Most of the time what you discover is that either the book is not out of date or you don't bother reading it because you want to talk with someone to understand it. And there is also a lot of misunderstandings when reading the documentation. And really, it's not the documentation that we want to have, it's actually working software. So therefore we prioritize to have something that is working over a thick book. That is not to say that documentation is not important. The important thing is that we have just enough documentation. Documentation so that anyone can understand what needs to be done at that time. But can call it just-in-time documentation. The next thing is to have customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Again, if you have been in the situation where you have been handed over a thick requirement specification, but you have never ever seen the person who actually wrote it or met the customer, chances are quite big that in the end what you have built is actually not what they wanted you to build. And this could be both because you did not understand the requirements, or because they were not clear enough, and multiple of other reasons that could happen. In the end, you might not have delivered actually something that is useful for now. So then you come into the contract negotiation instead, and you sit down together, and the customer says, hey, this is not at all what I wanted to have. And you go and show them the requirement specification and say, but hey, look here, this is what you wanted to have. And they say, well, that's not how I understood the requirements when I was writing them. And so you go into this. So really what you want to do is you want to have a customer collaboration. You want the people from the business to participate in the project from the start and be part of the project all the time. You ideally want the business to sit with the dev team. Which leads to the last statement here, which is responding to change over following a plan. As you know, we are in a world where things happen quickly and things change. You cannot wait for a year to launch a product because, face it, after 1 year so much have happened, so that the requirements and the ideas you had from the beginning, they are not valid anymore. That also makes it impossible to do a plan. The other thing with a plan, if you have received and seen a Gantt chart that is for more than 3 months, you know that you make a base plan and then you try to make revisions, and either you spend all the time making revisions to the plan, or you somehow try to pretend that you are according to plan, which you in most cases are not. So therefore we say it's more important to respond to a change and make adjustments in order to meet the current demands and actually stubbornly stick to an initial plan. So if I'm going to try to tell you a story about this, I mean, imagine that you're a captain of a big cargo boat or an oil tanker, and you have a manager who have planned and entered your entire course from Japan to Africa. And it has also been approved by the board and handed over to the captain. This is the best route. This will save the most fuel, and it's also the fastest route. Now, as you are on this ship, suddenly you see a huge iceberg in front of the boat, straight in the path where the boat is going. So you tell the captain, hey, you need to change the course or we will hit the iceberg. And then, the captain tells you, no, this is not possible, we're working in a very tight deadline and it would cost too much fuel to change the direction. So no, it's just not possible. We need to stick to the plan. This is quite silly, so you tell them, but the plan is not worth anything if we hit the iceberg because the boat will sink. So the captain takes up this very thick book with documentation of processes, and he hands it over to you and says, I've read this book from start to end, and there's nothing in this book telling you how to handle a collision with an iceberg. So this is exception management, and the procedure says that whenever there is an exception, it needs to be brought to the attention of the project board or to the management. So we need to contact management to see what can be done about this. This is quite silly, right? So, of course this is silly, but how come in many projects we actually adhere to these rules and think it does make sense? How can we think that in a software project this is an approach that is perfectly reasonable? So that's just an example or a story to try to highlight why we prefer to have powerful teams who can take their own decisions, who can solve problems by communicating, who can respond to change to avoid a catastrophe, and who can also immediately contact and be with the customer in the business at all times in order to take the right decisions and do the right prioritized decisions and, get to the end goal. So if we look into this very closely, this is a long text, but this is also something that came from that meeting in Aspen when everyone was talking and having a good time. And what they say is that our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. We welcome change requirements, even late in development. Agile process harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. We deliver software frequently, and the sooner we deliver it, the better it is, because it can be used by the business. Business people and the dev team must work closely together, sit together throughout the project. You build the project around motivated people. You give them the environment and you give them the support they need and trust them to get the job done. That is, you empower them. And of course, the most efficient and effective method of conveying information is with face-to-face communication, talking to real people. Working software is ultimately what counts towards progress. And you also pay continuous attention to technical excellence and try to improve yourself all the time. The art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. You just do what is needed at the right time. And the best architectures, requirements, and design emerge from self-organizing teams. And at regular intervals, the team do some retrospectives to see how they can become better. So, the other thing I want to just discuss, or I just want to give you a tip about, is the new product game, because very much of Scrum actually has its ideas from this excellent article from Harvard Business Review. It's from Hirotaka and Ikujiro, and they wrote this already in 1986, if I remember it correctly. And it highlights how a management, by setting a clear goal, but not micromanaging and not telling people how to do things, but rather telling them, this is the goal, we want you to reach it by this time, we don't care how you do it, and you get all the resources you need, and you can decide out yourself how to get to the end. By telling the vision and empowering people, Xerox and other Japanese companies managed to shorten the production cycle enormously. The paper is only about 15 pages, and you can find it on the web, so I would really encourage you to read that if you want to know more about the philosophy and ideas behind Scrum. Now, Scrum in summary. Again, Scrum is one of the Agile frameworks that allows to focus on delivering the highest business value. That is, we try to get something out to the business as quickly as possible so they can start using it, and actually we can have something useful in production. We focus a lot on inspect and adapt. The business sets the priority. That is, the business knows what is most important for them to have, and therefore they should set the priority. But it is a team that self-organizes to reach the goals that the business has set up and to deliver the features and stories that have the highest priority. Well, even so often, 2 weeks, 1 week, every day, anyone can see real working software. That is, after each sprint, you should have something that is can potentially be delivered to production, that can actually be used by real people in the real world. Okay. Now, this is a little bit of repetition, but it's just so it sticks in your head, hopefully. You have self-organizing teams. The product progresses in a series of sprints. Requirements are captured in a product backlog. Now, backlog might sound like a negative thing, but it's actually not. It's basically a place where you keep all the requirements or stories, as it's called. Scrum do not prescribe any specific engineering practices, as XP, for example. And it's one of the agile processes. No. So let's move on to the next section, which is more about the why or when to use agile methods or Scrum. So we're going to dive into one of my favorite pictures. On this one you can see a graph, and on the left side you can see the requirements. The higher up you come, the more far from a agreement you are on requirements, or the more shady they are, or the more uncertain they are. And the further down you go, the more certain you are about the requirements. On the bottom you have the technology. If you know the technology very well, you go to the left, and if you go very far to the right, that means it's a technology you don't know very much about. So, for example, let's say you have bought a box of Lego. Lego is a small building bricks you can use to create a lot of things. I'm sure you've seen it before. Anyway, when you buy the box, if you want to have a spaceship, you probably buy a box with a picture of a spaceship. You don't buy a box with a picture of a dinosaur, for example. So that means you're quite clear on the requirements, and you know actually what the requirements are and what you want to have. That means you're down close to agreement. The technology of Lego is quite simple. Even though there are different building blocks, nothing strange happens. You don't get any nasty surprises when you pair two pieces together. They behave as you expect, which means the technology is quite simple. This puts you in the box which says simple. Now, if we're down here, we probably can take a theoretical approach. That means we can have a step-by-step instruction of how to complete the spaceship, as we don't have any surprises. Right? So this is the waterfall method. We can think everything through, and we know exactly what will happen, and we can plan it quite well, which means we can take a theoretical approach. Now, let's say you built this spaceship and you have lots of other Lego, and of course you want to make this Lego a little bit more exciting. You might want to build an even better spaceship, or an even cooler spaceship. So how do you go about them? Do you sit down and you do a step-by-step manual? Not really, right? Some of you might do it, I don't know, but I wouldn't do it. So what you do is you start experimenting. And also let's pretend that you have another friend sitting next to you, and you're building a new spaceship, when suddenly you discover, hey, he's building a Death Star. Wow, I also want to have a Death Star. So therefore, suddenly this idea you had of building a spaceship has turned into building a Death Star. Now, the requirements at this time, they're quite far from what you agreed to initially, and we're not really sure about them. Technology is, still somewhat certain, but it's not as certain anymore, because you're not using exactly the bricks that you got in the box, because now you have other bricks and other Lego pieces from other places as well, which makes it a little bit more uncertain. You don't really know what pieces you have anymore. So this moves you up into the more complicated or complex area. When you come up to this stage, actually what you need to do is you need to begin to experiment. You need to inspect and adapt. And this is basically where Scrum fits in very well, where you can't predict anything, where you respond to changes, such as, our competition is building a Death Star, I think we need to build something else because our spaceship will not be sufficient, for example. Now, you can come into a much more complicated situation where you have no clue of what you're going to build and you have never used the technology, then you're up to anarchy. If you're up to this, I would just recommend that you just take a single developer and let that person sit with a single person from the business, and you kind of let them pair program. That works quite well until you know more about the requirements and the technology. That is really basically prescribing no method at all, and experiment as much as you can. But sometimes, you know, that could be the best approach. So I hope this gives you kind of a picture of when something is good to use. So if you look at this in more academic text, that is basically what this says, that if you know everything, then you can use a theoretical approach, you can think everything through in your head as Plato believes, but when it becomes too complicated and you cannot predict everything, then the Aristotelian approach might be better, that you begin to experiment in order to get to the end result, because you don't know what it is from the beginning, right? So let's move on. So let's see, if we compare waterfall and iterative versus the agile approach, both when you use waterfall and you use iterative approach, what you do is that you believe as you know everything from the beginning and you know exactly what the end result will be, and you believe there will be no changes to the project and you can predict everything, then of course you can write down all the requirements from the beginning, because there will be no changes. And if you just think it through carefully enough, then of course you can predict everything. So no point in doing anything else than writing a thick requirements documentation. When you have done that, you can do the design for everything, then you can do all the coding, then you do all the testing. Now, again, if you don't believe in this, if you think that change is something that will happen, if you do believe that the customer will change their mind, if you do believe that they have to adjust to the competition on the market, then you might have a different approach. So what you would do instead is that you try to prioritize what brings the highest business value right now, or the highest return of investment right now. Then you begin to do the requirement on that one, and the design, and the coding, and the testing, and you release it immediately into production. Now, some people might say, well, this just sounds like waterfall in a miniature scale. Really, it is not. The big difference is that you don't really know the exact end result. You have a vision of where you want to be, but it should not be focused on the output. It should be focused upon what the business wants to achieve. So you need to adjust all the time. So you do constant changes to what you should build and what has the highest priority right now. So it might be that you're turning out to build a spaceship, but as the competition is building a Death Star, you might have to change and build the Death Star. And it might also be that the Death Star is not all done before you take it into production. As soon as it can fire, why not start using it to destroy planets, right? Then of course you might have a problem with some rebel alliance somewhere that might come and destroy your plans. But you know, it's just something you have to take into consideration. Now, so what I want to say is basically that you do just-in-time documentation for the most important thing, not for everything, just for the thing that you want to build right now, that you want to get into production. Then you start building it, and you code it, and you test it, and it's moved into production immediately. So not a big bang release. Imagine, for example, you're building a site where customers can log in and they can book tickets for a concert. You might start with just putting up the site and the login, but you might not have, for example, the functionality to book a ticket. So what you might do is you still put it in production, but you just give the phone numbers to the call center that you already have, and they can start using that. Then as you go along, the next most important thing to do is, for example, the ability to book a ticket online. So then you put that into place, right? So as you can see, again, this thing comes from the new product development game. Now, so what we want to avoid is this Dilbert cartoon, where you can see that Dilbert is asking Wally, or rather Wally is asking Dilbert, how's the project coming along? And Dilbert says, it's a complete disaster. It's like 15 drunken monkeys with a jigsaw puzzle. And then comes the manager, the pointy haired boss, and asks, how's the... And you say, fine. Why do we do this? Well, the simple thing is, of course, that if a manager asks you a question and you say it's not going well, then of course you're going to get a lot of complicated questions such as, why is it not going well? What's wrong with you? Right? The other thing is, could also be that, for example, you have a product manager who has done the estimates and has given you the task to, for example, do a login. And depending upon the product manager and the estimate, you might react differently. So you might think, for example, if it says, okay, I estimate this will be 10 days, you might say, yes, great. That leaves me 8 days to play Counter-Strike and 2 days of programming. But it could also be that you think, 10 days, oh, I need at least 15 days, okay, let me do something quick and dirty. But you know, in the end, most of us are quite optimistic, and we try to avoid to actually tell what the situation looks like when it's going bad until the last possible moment, because we think that we might fix it or not. So what happens then is usually that you tell the product manager that in the last possible minute, of course, that this is not going well. So then he thinks, okay, but this is only one of 10 tasks and it's not on the critical path. So most likely the others are on schedule. So I don't need to raise this. It's fine. Then more and more people might come in the last possible second say, no, it's not going great. This is going very bad. So of course then the product manager have to go to the product board and tell them, hey, this is not going good, panic. And then they say, this is bad. You know, we're 9 months into the project and now you're telling us we're not on track. How come? And of course this is a lose-lose situation. This is what we want to avoid. And we do this by having frequent releases to production, by having regular stand-ups, and also by having transparency and making sure that everyone knows what's happening in the project and involving the business and being able to respond to change. So that is the theory, at least, you know. So then let's move on to the more exciting part here, and that is actually, how do we do this? Well, we're going to talk about 3 times 3 things, and that's all you need to remember. 3 times 3. There are 3 roles, there are 3 ceremonies, there are 3 artifacts. If you can remember this, you can remember everything there is about Scrum, in theory. So, let's begin with the roles, the 3 roles. But actually, no, before that, hang on. Let's have a quick overview of the entire process. This picture actually tells you all you need to know about Scrum. You have a product backlog, remember, where we have all the items. We move the most prioritized things into a sprint backlog. That is what gives us the most business value or return of investment right now. We start working on these items. Every day we have a daily stand-up, and by the end of the sprint we have something that we can potentially move into production. That is something that is useful, a finished thing that we can start using immediately. You know, that gives us value. Great, right? Alright, so let's see, now let's move into the roles. So first off, we have what's called the Scrum Master. This person is quite important. It's like servant leadership. His main role is to make sure that the team is fully functional, that they can work together, he needs to shield them from external influence and to remove any impediments or barriers. Also, if you think of it, let's say Gandalf, he was quite powerful. Would he be a good Scrum Master? Yes, I think he would. Let's think about it. No, in Lord of the Rings, he's a very powerful wizard. In reality, he could probably take the ring and he could teleport himself to the Mountain of Doom and just throw the ring into the fire. But is this what he does? No. What he does is he finds a person who needs to eat 8 times per day, sleep 12 hours, who have no clue of how to use a weapon, who has barely been out of his house, who mostly enjoys sitting down and smoking pipe. And he tells him, I'm going to give you the most dangerous task ever. And everybody is going to hunt you down and try to kill you. Sounds great, right? Alright, anyway, so what Gandalf does here is he takes a person and he empowers his persons and let Frodo become everything that he actually can be. So, in order to help Frodo, of course, he shields him from some external problems that he cannot take care of himself, and he also removes some other impediments. For example, he helps Aragorn to create this big, huge army that marches towards Mordor in order for Mordor, the evil wizard, then, to not pay attention to the little hobbit trying to sneak past and throw, with the intention of throwing the ring into the fire. So that's kind of good. So it's removing the impediments, empowering people, and giving him a team and letting the team solve their own problems. Not telling them exactly how to do. Putting a vision. Remember that the vision or the end goal is throw the ring into the fires of Mountain of Doom. And it doesn't tell them exactly how to do it step by step. There is really not a big project plan and they have to improvise a lot. So in my opinion, yes, Gandalf is probably a good Scrum Master. So next thing, the team. Here we go. The team should be cross-functional between 3 and 9 persons. We should not have larger teams because then communications break down. In my opinion, I think a team of 4 to 5 is preferable. The team decides themselves how to work. They also decide the way they want to work and how to solve problems. They must be empowered and they must be given the right to fix and solve the problems themselves. It's really important for the team to become creative and innovative that they have this right. Otherwise you're back to project management again, where a project manager points with his or her entire hand and tells anyone exactly what to do. That's not how a team works. They divide the work themselves, among themselves, and decide themselves how they should fix the problem. They have it all in their own power, right? They're also the one who estimates how long time something would take to complete. And I think that is quite fair. It is a team that will do the work, and they are the experts. So probably they are the best ones at giving the estimate as well. Also, they collaborate with the business, that is the product owner, to ask that person questions and to get clarifications and to understand what really brings business or value to the business. They're also the one who do the demo whenever something is ready to demo, something that is done. Alright, so the last and most important person, maybe, the product owner. This is the business. This is someone who needs to know the business. This is someone who needs to understand the customers and what they want to have. This is someone who can prioritize what brings the most value right now, what brings the highest return of investment. So they help prioritizing, and this they do, and then they discuss with the team to make sure that the team understands what is needed. right? So basically you can say that the product owner is a little bit of a living requirement specification that you can talk with, who answers questions for you. It's kind of magic, you know. That you ask something and you get an answer back. You don't have to read it in a 300-page thick document that you don't understand anything of. You can actually talk to a person and try to understand that person. Of course, this means that the product owner must be someone who can make themselves understood to the team. Let's think of it. If you have Mordor, would he be a good product owner? No, I don't think so. You know, of course he understands the business, he understands what the different dwarves and elves and other persons wants to have. They want to have a ring of power. And he gives that to them, but he doesn't tell them that he will create another one that will control all of the rings. The other thing is as well that he doesn't empower anyone. In fact, if anyone gets too powerful, he's likely to kill that person. He doesn't tell anyone about his plans. He keeps that to himself, so there is no transparency. And really, he likes to do everything by himself. He doesn't trust anyone. And trust is something a good product owner must have. So, I mean, he's not really present either, right? He's just a shadow. You can feel his presence everywhere, but you know, he's not really there and you can't really ask him anything. So, you know, a good product owner is working together with the team, sitting next to the team, ideally, and they can answer questions. And they can make the right prioritizations and take the right decisions. He also talks with the management and any other stakeholders in order to ensure that they understand why he is making the prioritizations and decisions he or she is doing. And again, he makes sure that the team understands the business goals and to make sure that they're one step ahead. So that is the product owner. So again, we had the Scrum Master, the team, and the product owner. So let's go into ceremonies now. The first one is the sprint planning meeting. You have this before the sprint starts. Normally, you say that it should last for not more than 4 hours. There has been some discussion saying 1 week could have 1 hour, a 2 week could have 2, and so on. But basically the principle is not more time that people can focus. And usually 4 hours is the maximum amount of time that people can focus. After that, people fall asleep. What you do in the sprint planning meeting is you decide team members, the team capacity, how much work they think they can get done. You set a sprint goal, you remember the vision, you decide upon length, you prioritize the stories, that is the functionality that you think needs to be done, and you do the estimates. This is quite an interesting game, almost I would say sometimes, because remember, the product owner does the prioritization, but the team does the estimates. And let's say you can have 50 points done in a sprint. That means that the product owner can only get 50 points done in that sprint. So he has to pick enough things that it becomes 50. This might be a little bit hard to picture, but picture that the amount of work that can be done in a sprint is the same as the amount of water you can fit into a glass. You cannot pour more water into the glass than it can fit. Everything else, the more you try to pour in, it just spills over. It's the same thing, and this is where the estimates are important, because the team commits to how much work it can do during the sprint. And this is really important, it's the team that does this, because it is the team that will do whatever they can to reach this goal. And if they don't feel that they can reach that goal, then their commitment is null. It's nothing. So therefore it's extremely important for the team to feel committed. Yes, this is the amount of work that we can complete. it is extremely important for the product owner to have picked the right things that should be done by the end of the sprint, because he will have to answer to the management and to the business that he actually picked the right things to be built during the sprint. Now, again, it's important that the sprint is not longer than you can keep changes out of it. Remember, we said we respond to changes and we're happy with the changes, but not during the sprint. Because the team has made a commitment to how much it can do during the sprint, and if that changes, there is no commitment. Remember the water glass? Alright. Every day you have a daily scrum. You meet somewhere, hopefully in front of a whiteboard or somewhere else where you can see the work you're doing, and you stand up and you ask 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What will you do today? What is blocking you? And the last question is actually what keeps transparency alive. Because by trying to find problems and blockers as soon as possible, you can actually do something about it, and maybe the others in the team can help you. So you don't keep silent about it. You don't tell everyone else, yes, it's going fine. You actually tell others, help, I need help. I need to be able to fix this. And then maybe others can do it. There are other benefits as well, because everybody in the team becomes aware about what's happening in the project right now. Maybe someone is saying, well, I'm going to start building this mail manager. And someone else says, oh, I built one for the previous project. You can steal the code from me. Ah, great, thank you. That's just saved me some time. And so on. So this is something for every day, and everyone should be there. Both the product owners, or the product owner, and the Scrum Master, and the team. Now, other people can listen in as well, but they're not allowed to speak. Only pigs are allowed to speak. Chicken can listen. And what do I mean by this? Well, there is a story. There is a chicken and a pig walking down the road, and the chicken says, I'm thinking of opening a restaurant. Do you want in? And the pig says, well, do you have a name in mind? And the chicken says, yes, ham and eggs. Great. And then the pig says, I don't think so, because you would only be involved, but I would be committed. That is, it's his bacon on the frying pan, not the chicken's. So anyone who wants something to say about the project or going to do some work, they are the pigs, because it's their bacon that's going to get fried if it goes wrong. So the chickens who are only involved, if they want to be committed, they need to become pigs, right? The next thing after the sprint is done, you immediately do a demo. And at the demo, the team, they prepare for about an hour, and they invite the word, and they show to everyone what has been done. And here it's important, only things that have been done, and we'll come to that, can be demoed. And then after that, there is a decision, should we go live with this or not? And preferably you do, because that will give you some business value. After that, the teams do a retrospective, where they go through what did we do well, what could we have done better, and what should we keep doing, or what should we improve for the next sprint, so you continuously become better and better all the time, and you don't keep doing the same mistakes. Now, let's quickly move into the artifacts. There are the backlog, the sprint backlog, and the burn down. Now, if you look at the backlog, for example here, we have a few stories. As a ring bearer, I must carry the one ring to breathe. The estimate is 3 points. Or, as a hobbit, I want to clean my house before leaving. Or, the epic, the big one. As a king, I want to gather an army so that I can defeat the orc army. And then, improve transactional, T31 exception handling. Now, some stories are good, some are not. The story about improved transactional T31 is probably not good, because a story should be in a language that everyone understands, from the product owner to the team to basically anyone who has something to do with the project. So it should be in a good converse.